Welcome to If Taps Could Talk, a brand new series in association with Beamish. Lads, there's nothing better than an Irish pub, and let's face it, they're like sacred spaces here in Ireland. The best pub has the perfect spot for you to sit down and watch people go by. You know what, sometimes the decor hasn't been changed in a good while, and you know the barman has seen and heard it all. Pubs aren't just about drink, there's so much more to it. But you know what makes having a pint even better? That's sharing an experience with someone else. Across this series, we are going to be looking at some of the most iconic pubs in Ireland, the ones with genuine character, untold history, and bucket loads of charm. We'll be looking at what makes each pub so iconic and why it's held so dearly to the locals. So whether you're here for the company, the chat, or a pint, pull yourself up a chair and let's get started. Welcome to If Taps Could Talk. Today our guest is one of Ireland's top comedians, known for his sharp wit, and he's one of Cork's favourite sons. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Chris Kent. How are you?
Great. Cheers.
Cheers, man. Thanks for today. Oh yeah.
Yes, that's nice.
It's nothing nicer, is it?
That's lovely now, yeah.
So we're in the Oval.
Yes.
This pub has so much history. I came into it a couple of years ago at a stag, and I remember just for like the first 3 minutes, like being on Times Square, just looking around it.
Yeah.
What's your history with it?
I'm very surprised there was a stag in here, to be honest. I'm surprised they let you in.
It was the very first pub. It was
it a very disciplined stag?
The very first pub. This was the kind of the starter. We worked our way back into Cork.
It's a great starter pub actually for a stag, to be fair.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it in here. It's class.
What is it about it? Because there's so much to it. Every time I come into it, I'm like, geez, I never noticed that. Never knew this.
So much going on. And I think a lot of pubs now these days, it's becoming trendy to put your phone away, you know? Put your phone away when you come in the door. But I think the sign of a really good pub is when you don't feel like taking it out because there's loads around, there's loads keeping you busy, like, you know? So.
When did you start coming here?
I first came here in my 20s probably. Someone brought me in here for a pint and I absolutely loved it in the middle of winter. Fire lighting over there. Good kind of vibe in here. I think the people that come in and have a drink are nice as well. Staff are nice, so you know, it immediately went into like, this is one of my favourite pubs.
I think the relationship that Beamish have with this place as well, with, you know, Beamish being across the road,
yes,
and this here as well. I was here yesterday and I think everyone was by the Beamish.
The creamy Beamy.
Yeah.
What I love about it is there's always a lot of chat going on when you're in here. Everyone is in their own conversation, something going on in every corner, in every little cubby, like, you know.
We need to talk about, I remember the first time I heard of you, my friend Cormac was like, I'm going to see a fella called Chris Kent.
Cormac Moore.
Yes. And massive fan of yours and shouter of yours for I don't know how long.
Yes.
He's been always doing it. And I remember he was telling me about your, you know, when you started to where you are now. It's a fantastic story.
It's cool, yeah. It feels like an overnight success, but it's taken me like 20 years, you know. So I've been doing it since I'm 20. Yeah, I'm nearly 20 years now. It's coming up.
Were you a funny kid?
No, absolutely not. Very introverted. Potentially funny within a small group of friends, you know, that way. But never a class clown or anything like that. Wouldn't have had that confidence. I would have been quite shy and introverted, but if you're in my little circle, absolutely. I'm not afraid to be goofy and funny and all that.
And were there people that were funny in your house? Because we interviewed someone recently and she's a musician and she was like, there was no one in my house that was musical or that wanted to do stuff with music. Like, was there anyone that you were watching in-house?
To be fair, everyone in my house is funny. And when I was in my house, it was a safe place to be funny, like, you know. So my mum and dad are particularly funny. My mum is really, really funny and still is. Really quick-witted, very sort of sarcastic, but very quick and is just really naturally funny. My dad is very funny in a different way. He doesn't always know he's being funny. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, he'll just say something really random or funny, but it didn't intend to be a punchline. But so I think I have a little mix of the both of them, you know?
So going back early days, when did you decide you were going to start this? You know, because it is a tough graft, you know, at the start. I know you're traveling all around Ireland.
Yeah.
For what, 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes?
That's it. Yeah. I tell you now, right? My eyes were opened up to it. Des Bishop did a show in Cork, in Knocknaheeny, where I'm from. He did a show. You remember that show where he did all these disadvantaged areas?
Yes.
Joy in the Hood. I didn't do that, but I knew the people on it. So what I did then was I went to see this gig. It was in the local GA club at the end, where all these people that were not comedians, they were just people I knew. I was friends with them. They got up and they were doing the gig with Des, and I was just like, this is incredible. I've never seen anything like that in my life. So I then went to see them in town. So I used to go to little pubs in town and watch them do gigs there. And then you watch other people do the gigs that I didn't know, and I didn't, they weren't comedians, as in like famous comedians like Des or Tommy. And that was a big inspiration to me. I was like, oh, anybody can give this a go. Like, this is, I was very intrigued, and I was very shy, so I was very terrifying. But it was an itch that I just kind of had to scratch. I was like, I need to give this a shot.
First gig, can you remember it?
I can remember it, yeah. It was above a pub called Jim Cashman's in Cork. There was probably 30 people there. I was unbelievably nervous. I may have vomited outside on the way in. But as soon as I started, it just, I remember just getting a few laughs, and I was absolutely hooked. I was like, this is incredible. Looking back now, it was probably absolutely shockingly bad. Do you know what I mean? Like, but you need that little bit of, you need a little bit of, what's the word I'm looking for now? I think you need a bit
validation, maybe. Is that it when you get that?
You're getting a bit of validation, and I think, you're a bit naive as to how well it went. But actually, I think you need that in the beginning just to get you back up there again. Like, it's not live at the Apollo. It's not like this big shiny thing. It's a pub with 30 people, and I was probably stammering and stopping, and but I couldn't wait to do it again.
When you were doing that, how were you balancing everything? Because you were still working full time up until about 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah.
On top of that, and it is work, but sometimes it's so hard when you're doing something you love and then having to pay the way for your own life.
So it's a hobby for years. It's a hobby for a couple of years, and you keep it as a hobby to yourself. To yourself, you might be going, I'd love to do this full time, but I'll tell everyone else it's just a hobby and I don't really care about it.
Is that an Irish thing? Is that an Irish thing that we do that? They kind of go, oh no, it's grand, sure, I'm only doing it.
I'm only having a laugh, I don't really care about it. I think it's a protecting yourself thing, because you don't want to be, because I really loved it and I didn't want to be put off in any way. If I said, actually I'd like to do that as a job, all it takes is one person to say, oh, it'd be really hard now, you wouldn't get any holiday pay, you'd be self-employed, and then it's just, you're just, you know what I mean, you're taken away from it. So you tell everyone.
Were you telling people in the early days that you were doing it? Or were you kind of keeping it to yourself?
I didn't tell my parents, I didn't tell my family.
And why was that? Why
I just didn't. I thought less pressure, I'll just go. I remember I was on the TV and I didn't even tell my mother about it, years later. I was on a panel show and she was like, oh my God, you were on the telly last night. And I just didn't tell her. She's just how she found out was I was on the telly, But no, I'm far more open with it. I tell everyone, and I'm like, yeah, I'm very comfortable in my own skin that I'm a comedian, and I'll tell everybody. But in the early days, I definitely just kind of kept it to myself. And
you like to keep people grounded, I find sometimes.
Yeah.
So you're still at that, are you? How's that going
exactly.
for you?
You're still doing the comedy. You're still doing the comedy thing, yeah. So, yeah, you'd be kept grounded in this country, for sure.
The comedy scene all over Ireland is huge, but I find the venues are everywhere.
Yeah.
Were you commuting up and down every night?
Up and down all the time. As soon as you get it, I started 20 years ago, so it was phone numbers. It was you get all these phone numbers, you're collecting all these contacts, and you're ringing this guy for a gig in Dublin, and you're ringing for a gig in Belfast, and you have your paper diary. It seems like a different world. And it's you have a 5-minute spot in November, so you're 4 months away, and you're really excited about it. And
they probably have one every night of the week, so
and they
you're
have
just
them
part
all
of
the time,
cog.
yeah. So then you're I remember when I was kind of starting to break a little bit, I was working full time as an electrician, and getting into my car on a Friday after work, and where are you off to? And people would have known by then. I was like, I'm going to Belfast today, I'm doing a gig. And how long are you doing? I'm doing 5 minutes. And are you getting paid? No. So they were like, what? So it baffled them. But at that point I was over that. I was like, I know why I'm doing it,
You could see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. And it is still a slog. It's not everybody has a success story in it, and it's a lot of people fall away.
Those drives. Is there any that you remember that you're going, this is not going to end?
Absolutely, yeah. There's drives when the gig didn't go well and you have to get back into your car and drive all the way back to Cork just with the thoughts of that gig, that horrible show that you just done. you're trying to cleanse yourself out of it, like, you know.
And you're in the car on your own for like 4 hours.
In the car on your own, yeah.
Jeez, I never thought of that actually.
Yeah.
I heard Tommy Tiernan saying something before about he offended somebody.
Yes.
The whole driveway back to Galway.
Yeah. But that happens every now and again, you know.
That's good though.
Yeah, you're just feeling bad about it.
Where's the place do you think of the smaller comedy gigs that you'll always kind of look back to in fondness from the early days?
From the early days.
That when you're looking at it now going, that's still there, it's still rocking.
Yeah, there's a few of them. City Limits in Cork here is pretty good. Now, I didn't get in there for a couple of years, but that's one place where I really cut my teeth. I became a resident MC there, and I was there nearly every single week. Now, I hadn't been going a couple of years at that point. I'd been and gone to Australia and everything, and came back, and I'd done some gigs in Australia, but I was still, I was still finding my feet, I think, in comedy. So that was one place that, I would still have a fondness for. But there's great gigs now all over the country, which is amazing. There's a brilliant scene in Cork here, like, you know. There's the Coco Comedy Club, City Limits, there's Collins. There's comedy nearly every single night somewhere in Cork, which was, to be honest with you, that used to only be a Dublin thing. But now in Cork, there's comedy nearly every other week if you wanted to jump up and try some new stuff or whatever.
Who were you watching back then of the big guns that you look back at now? You mentioned Des Bishop.
I mentioned Des and Tommy, and to be honest with you, I wasn't watching an awful lot of comedy before I started. So I knew of Des, and I was watching him. I'd seen him on something, like, you know, but I hadn't actually watched a whole pile of comedy. I wouldn't have been into it. I was doing comedy when someone gave me a Tommy Tiernan DVD, my friend, and then another friend of mine, he gave me a Richard Pryor DVD. So it was good in a way because I think I wasn't really influenced by anyone. So I just started talking about stories and, you know what I mean, talking about stuff that was going on at home, whereas if I had been watching people like that, maybe I would have been a little bit deterred to try it, because it's such a big leap. You know, if you go to see Tommy or Des in like the Opera House, and you're like, there's 1,000 people there and they have them in the palm of their hand for the whole thing, I'd be watching that going, I can there's no way I can do that. Whereas upstairs in a venue like this or something like that, you're going, okay, it is, I can at least do that. You know, I can at least be as bad as that person.
Yeah. And there's been, I've sat at a few gigs now over the years, and they'll say something, and I'm always watching what everyone else is reacting to that. And when you get that laugh, I don't know how to describe it. Like, it must feel like some sort of adrenaline that you get, some sort of a rush.
Yeah, no, definitely. It is a big rush. And then I think it can also be a bit all-consuming, like, because especially in the beginning, you're getting better and better, and then you're like, oh, but they didn't laugh at this tiny little. They normally laugh at that little bit, then why didn't they do that? And it becomes almost unenjoyable for a small bit, and then you sort of go back and relax back into it, and you learn how to separate gigs, you know. I would have taken gigs very personally in the beginning that didn't go well, and I would have, that's me, that was my fault, that wasn't a good gig tonight. And no matter what was going on, I'd be like, that's my fault now. The room could be on fire, and I'd walk away and go, geez, they weren't really laughing.
How do you separate that
fire into? Because I think experience, you know, experience. I've done some gigs where I've died in my arse so badly, and I've walked away going, oh God, what am I doing? What am I doing? Even though this material has worked 100 times, I walk away going, what have I done wrong now? You know? I mean, I've talked about this before, but the worst gig I've ever had was in Dublin, actually. And upstairs in a pub, I arrive, and I'm fully loaded with new material, so I've been working on new jokes all day, and I'm like, this is it now, I'm going to do all my new jokes today. And it was really quiet. It was just one of those. I don't know if you've ever experienced a comedy night like that, where even the host is on and no one's really getting on board. They're all kind of like a little bit, and transpired that like there was about 30 people in the audience, maybe 14 of them had English if you were lucky. So, you know, it's a lot to task, you know what I mean? And I went up and I died so badly. It was horrendous. Like silence, like you wouldn't believe, just staring at me.
Oh.
Can you imagine that? Just making eye contact with everybody in the room, pretty much staring at you. I could hear myself sweating, and I started panicking. I started really panicking. And then I tried to do old material, and that wasn't working either. And then I said it to the host at the back of the room. I said, what am I going to do? Will I stop? Or will I keep going? It was like having almost a breakdown at the stage. And he was like, And then a woman stood up, and she was like, can somebody please help him? And that was like the most devastating heckle of all time. So I just walked off the stage, and I put on my coat, And I didn't even say goodbye to anyone. I just went. I was living in Dublin at the time. I walked home to my apartment in Dublin, and I just couldn't function. I had to put on a DVD. I couldn't sleep or anything. Put on a movie and watched it. And it took me like a week probably to just emotionally get over that gig. Whereas now, if something like that happened, A, I'd be able to call it in the room and go, this isn't going very well, or for whatever reason. And B, I'd be able to separate and go, half the room didn't speak the language you were speaking. You're fine. Give yourself a break, and you were trying new material, you know? Whereas back then it was like, oh God, I'm absolutely ruined.
So you're doing the gigs, you're working. When did you go to Australia? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. From
heading to Ireland to Australia.
Yeah, so I did comedy here. I was doing comedy for about a year and a half. 2005 I started, and then I got qualified as an electrician around the same time. But it was very much like I said, the hobby here anyway, being a comedian. So I flew to Australia with my wife. I worked as an electrician over there. Probably didn't get a gig over there for a couple of months. It was kind of tough to break into the scene. I was kind of emailing people, not getting anyone getting back to me. But Australia was brilliant though. It didn't matter that I wasn't doing comedy there. I was working as an electrician, you know. I was making so much money. I was just having the time of my life with all my friends every day in the pub after work. Like what a life it was. And eventually we moved to Perth and I started doing loads of gigs and working. So that was a right mix of the two. So, and I was taking a little bit of copper off the side as well. So I was making money from all angles. It was the peak almost of my life at that point. But yeah, spent a year and a half in Australia. Had a brilliant time over there. Absolutely brilliant time. Was actually meant to go back. Was sponsored and everything by my company. So I flew back here in late 2008, just in time for the crash. The proper, I think I got a month's worth of work as an electrician here, and then it stopped. And I just happened to be making a little bit of money off comedy. So that sort of pushed me rather than, I didn't have to jump, which was kind of nice in a way. I'm not sure how confident I would have been to go, I want to be a full-time stand-up comedian now. I had no choice. There was no work there. And I was just making a little bit of money off that. But we were set to go back to Australia, but my wife got a job that she liked, and I started making money off comedy, which I really liked. Australia to me was incredible, amazing. But being in Ireland and doing a job you love just went above it. I was just like, this is just after pipping it a little bit. I think I was still kind of an open spot in some places. So I was like, my first aim was I'll get paid working every gig in Ireland. I'll be the paid 10-minute spot, and then I want to be the sort of the best at that. So I progress up to the 15-minute and then the half an hour or whatever, the headliner. And then through a couple of years, then it was like, let's start touring and but it's still a slog. It's just my wife is very supportive and I'm really lucky. She's always been like, keep going, keep doing it.
How long are you together?
I should know that, shouldn't I? 10 years married anyway.
Wow.
Nearly 20 years as well, actually. I think she got with me just around when I started comedy at the same time.
Brilliant.
So, but I wasn't a comedian when I met her. I wasn't a comedian after I met her for a while either. But, she's always been very supportive. And even the whole thing went full circle there 2 years ago. So I'd been doing comedy full time for 12 years almost. Then the COVID happened. Bang, it's gone. There's no more gigs. We were living in England at the time. So then we moved back to Ireland. Found myself living in my childhood bedroom with my wife and kids. I have nothing. I have no gigs at all. I have a 10-year gap in my CV, or more even, for being an electrician. And for a while I didn't know whether I was going to get either again, because the gigs didn't look like they were coming back. And thankfully I got work again as a Sparks. Went back to that, which was terrifying. But I was so grateful of it. So grateful.
What were the changes from then? So now you're the kind of older fella and the young fellas are around. What was that like? I'm sure you were getting content out of that.
That made it easier actually. And I thought, because I was terrified of going back, because I'm like, I haven't done this in 10 years. I don't know if I'm going to remember everything or even if I'm going to be able to do anything. But of course you don't need to know absolutely everything, and nobody does. So that was just me, painting myself into a corner. I did get a little bit of yappy the first couple of days, young fellas, oh, he's a comedian, he's supposed to be a comedian, but not much. Most people were so supportive, and after a couple of weeks I was like, this is incredible. I'm getting money in my bank every Friday. you know what I mean? The comedy was a struggle up to then. I was like, I'm getting money now. I'm not used to having money at all. Why did I not do this for years? Like, you know? So in a way, it was actually like completely full circle, because the gigs eventually started coming back, but in drips and drabs. They were Zoom gigs. Oh, I hated them. I mean, it wasn't worth going into the bedroom for. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was like, why did I do that? What a waste of a journey. I should have stayed on the couch. And then there was ones in beer gardens where you could, you know, see your breath, and there was 15 people allowed in, and it was raining. But I was like, okay, you know, I didn't miss the comedy until I started doing it again. Then I was like, oh, I kind of missed this now. Someone
told me about TikTok, I think it was, and you and COVID, and it was kind of you had so much content that you never knew you had. And can you tell us a bit about that you started throwing it up online, and that's when...
So it was a little bit after COVID, right? Myself and my wife, we were working away. I was doing my day job. I was doing loads of gigs then, and then I was doing the day job hours were going up as well, and we were looking for a house at the time, and we couldn't. We just no success at all. But I had a mortgage on the back of my electrical job, so I was like, I need to keep this. I need to get a house. I could probably leave and do comedy now, but I'm not going to get another mortgage. So, but it was hard, and it was like we weren't getting anywhere. And I had 2 jobs. She had a job. We were getting outbid everywhere. And eventually, my wife said, "This is it. Like, just leave it. I thought she was joking with me the first time. My wife says, "Just leave your job. Just leave it. Go back to comedy." And I'm like, "What about the mortgage though?" And she's like, "Just forget it. It's not working out, is it? We're not getting a house anyway, Chris, so forget about it." And I genuinely didn't really take her that seriously the first time. And then she said it again, and I was like, "Oh, I don't know." And she was like, "Seriously, I think you're going to regret it," because I never really made it. I feel like I was about to. And she's like, "I feel like you're going to really regret this," because I felt like it was slipping. And also I was getting a bit comfortable with the paycheck on the Friday, and I was only taking gigs I wanted to take. I wasn't really pushing myself in comedy. And my wife was like, "I think you should give it up." And she pretty much like forced my hand and said, "Give it up, but if you do give it up, put yourself out there properly." Because I was always very good at writing shows every year, gigging all around the country, but I was never very good at promoting myself. So like that, I learned how to edit properly. I went onto my hard drive, and I just had loads of shows that I had recorded. So I think I'm on my 9th show now. So it was like 8 hours of footage on a hard drives in various venues. So I learned how to cut that, and I was cutting it and putting it out every single day. Nothing was actually happening for months, but I began to see it kind of snowball. So this is when I gave up my job now, and I just began to see it every sort of picking up and up and up, and I began to see the gigs get a bit busier, and then it just went kind of crazy. Like I went from doing a modest enough 20 odd date tour, including a big date in Cork and a big date in Dublin, but modest enough, to doing like 130 dates or something, because of the online thing, you know? And it was all sold out bar like a handful, you know? So
and because of all the algorithms and all that, you could see who was watching where, could you? And you'd be like going, "I'm going to stick a gig on here because, you know, it's big." And
I think we were just taking chances. I think we were just kind of going, I'd never drilled into the algorithm like that, but I just went, this is kind of mad. After I started putting the clips up, I didn't tour for about a year after that, you see, so I didn't really see the benefits. So, but then when my agency booked the new tour in, I couldn't believe it. I remember they rang me like after about a day or two, and they were like, "Oh, the Limerick date is sold out. Do you want to add another one?" And I was like, "What?" Like, this was like, the Limerick gig was in 8 months or something. And I was like, "Really? That's never happened." And then the other one sold out, and the other one sold out. So then I was just taking chances everywhere, and started going up a room size and all that. And I was like, you know, it was a real dream come true thing, something I've been wanting for years and years and years and years.
And the people that were going to these gigs are going, "Oh, I've got this new guy," but you were at it for so long.
Yeah,
and you had persisted on it.
I got a bit of that, yeah. And I got a bit of people coming up going, we were there from the beginning. We found you in COVID. I'm like, I was going 12 years before COVID, you lunatic, you know. But I'm very grateful. It was incredible.
And did you find a lot more when you were putting the stuff up online and TikTok and all that? Were you getting more ideas from all that because you were looking at some of the old stuff that you did, and you'd grown a bit more and probably matured a bit more?
Yeah, well, I had a lot to write about actually because I'd given up my job, as opposed to, it was like a real full circle. 2009 I got pushed into comedy, and 2022 I jumped, like I went, this is it now, handing in my notice, you know what I mean? So I had a whole other perspective of I've given up my job to do this, and this is what it's like to give up your job. And I had loads of stuff as well about trying to buy a house and all that. That's the best thing about being a comedian. Things are going tits up, everything is falling apart, and you're like, oh, there's a good 20 minutes here. You know what I mean? There's a good story here, though.
Everyone crying in the house. You're going, no, we need to something else.
Take it easy. Even on my honeymoon, I remember our honeymoon was just a disaster. Everything was going wrong. And I never said it or took it, but at the time I was like, in my head, I was like, oh, there's some good material here, I think, you know, which is great, which is the best thing about being a comedian, probably. I
have a friend who's a comedian, and she says she gets the amount of people that she knows, friends.
Yes.
Oh God, I've got this 40th coming up. Would you do a set for me?
Oh no.
Yeah, and I never knew how popular that was for friends or people that you would know from school that would come off and go, I'm getting married next week. Yeah. Would you come on and do a half an hour? Going to half an hour at a wedding?
No.
Does it happen to you, or has it happened to you?
I have gotten asked to do loads of weddings. I've refused. I'm actually never really around. They ask me. It's not my thing, I don't think. 40th or weddings, and I've done my 20 years of stand-up now, you know, and I've been in loads of situations where I knew this is not going to work. Like sometimes there is a random gig put on inside a pub, and Champions League is on above your head, and they've given you a microphone that doesn't stretch past the telly, and it's just like, you know, I've done enough kind of, I know myself now that a 40th or a wedding, it's too hard. I don't want to do it either. Do you know what I mean?
They're there for something else. They're there for the love, the pints, the food.
I was at my, yesterday, my son had a soccer tournament on, you know, and there was like, 20 under 8 teams and all their parents. And there was a guy in a PA all day, and he was like, well, you know, the next round of the tournament is starting, and it's this team versus this team over there. And he came over to me and was like, will you do 5 minutes? And I was like, no, I will not do 5 minutes to children in this blazing sun, because I'm not an idiot. I know how comedy works, you know what I mean? And he was probably half joking, but I was like, straight up, no. Whereas in the past, I probably would have felt a little bit guilty. And I said, oh, I don't, and maybe just felt like I needed to justify how that's not going to work. But I was just like, no, are you mad?
Good man, Dave, thanks very
Lovely.
much. Cheers,
Thank
man.
you, Dave. Absolute legend.
Cheers. Sláinte.
Cheers. Sláinte.
Oh God,
that's lovely.
That is delicious.
Creamy beamy.
Hecklers. Hecklers.
Yes.
Do you welcome it, or do you know how to deal with it, or how does that work in your brain?
Yeah, it's kind of, it doesn't happen that often, actually. People think, they always say hecklers, they're rare enough. They're rare enough. Vast majority of people want to watch a show, but every now and again it does happen, and I sort of go with it now. Also, I never did crowd work before, but that's something I do now all the time. I just go up and chat to the crowd, and maybe that kind of brings on a little bit of that interaction with the crowd that probably opens itself up to the heckling, you know. I don't have stock lines for hecklers. I genuinely try and think on the spot about something to say to that heckle. I would never reply with something that's in my back pocket. I don't like that kind of
and
stuff
that kind of
put
would
down.
that bring on then them wanting to do it, so they're going to go to your show because they want to heckle. So that's probably the last thing you want.
No, yeah, exactly. I don't want that. I don't want to be known for that guy that has these, you know, these kind of stuff, because I think that definitely encourages it, and I don't like it. I like telling stories. I like a big narrative in my show, and I love people to be hooked on every tiny little bit. And sometimes, to be fair, if someone heckles something or someone shouts something about the show, it can bring you right into the present moment, and it can add to it. To be fair, like, it can add to it, but most of the time it's just nonsense as well. It's somebody shouting. It's someone that's probably forgotten what they're watching, or is a little bit zoned out of the show. Is not really, you know what I mean? Like, it's not really up to date. But what was he talking about again? Kind of thing. So then they feel like they need to interject. I don't mind heckling too much. What drives me mad is like ignorance at gigs. So just people talking, just people like having a conversation in the middle of you just every now and again you spot a bit of it, and you sort of have to play. Am I going to address this? And then you have to kind of weigh it up, because you'll see there's a million things going on in your head. Like, they're annoying someone around them as well. These people are pointing at them now, or these people are shushing them, and then you have to address it. And the fact that they get offended and go, oh, you know, we were only laughing, we were only talking. No, you weren't. Like, you know, that's not what laughing is. Laugh like the rest of them, not with words. Nobody laughs with words to each other.
I don't think those people understand when you're up high and you're looking down. You can see a lot more than they think they can see.
You can see loads, and sometimes people will be just like, I think I get every now and again as well as people being a little bit over familiar with me, which I think is great in a way, but people will just kind of stop me in the middle of a show, like in the middle of a gig. I'm like, I work with your dad, George, in bus Aaron. And that was in the Olympia last time, and I was like, what? Steve? And I'm like, all right, Steve, like, what, where do you want me to go with this? This is just out of the darkness, you know? Or people, I'll be talking about my family, and someone will just say, I could be talking about my mother, and someone will say, Carol, isn't it? And I'm like, yeah, it's Carol, you know my mother's name, but...
And it's kind of wholesome, but again, it doesn't add anything to the show itself.
It's wholesome, but if it happens 3 or 4 times, it can interrupt the flow of the show, and then the show can be, it might seem to the audience like it's normal, but to me then it's like, oh, you've kind of ruined the flow. Like, there's a certain kind of energy that goes through the show that you're kind of, nobody cares if you know my dad's name or my mum's name. Do you know what I mean?
I was reading recently about the time you decided, I'm going to go off everything, and it's now your new show.
It's not my new show, yeah.
I have so many questions, because the more I thought about it, the more I went, it's crazy how it's so unnatural for us to be talking about us going offline, because it's involved in every single part of our life. Can you tell us why you decided just to get away from phones?
Yeah.
Was it laptops as well?
Away from the internet, yeah.
So the whole internet, no matter what?
I didn't log on to anything for 8.5 weeks. I just had a Nokia phone. That's all I wanted.
The little brick ones?
Just a little 3310 or whatever it was, yeah. That's all I had, because I needed to be contactable still. So I don't know, it was coming to the end of the other tour, and I needed to write another show, and I couldn't sit down for 40 minutes without just being distracted. That was kind of it was all well and good getting a break online, but I think that heightened my addiction to my phone, because I was always on it. I was always putting up videos, I was always researching, I was always trying to drill into the algorithms or whatever, figure out what I'm doing wrong, and that just led to my screen time going through the roof and my creativity going through the floor, basically. So I also thought about this about years ago. I thought I'd love to give up the internet, because I got a bad review in Edinburgh in 2012, and I was like, who the fuck is this prick? I want to give up the internet now, you know? I took it really personally. So that was my main reason was I need to write a new show. I'm after coming to the end of this big huge tour now, and I just had the thought coming back from Edinburgh last year, I think this is the one I'm going to do. I think I'd like to give up. Is it possible? Then I started to wonder, because I'm on my phone so much, to completely give up the internet.
And it's a vicious circle, because in your line of work you need it.
You kind of need it, yeah. So we figured something out. I made a little documentary about it. We figured something out where on the second last night of my tour in the Everyman, I handed my phone over. So my wife agreed to take all of my social media, all of my online admin, everything was swapped. So that's how it was kind of done. I couldn't just, I wanted to just stop everything, and kind of a word with my agents and stuff. They're like, you can't just not reply to an email for 2.5 months or whatever. So my wife sort of took all that. I was given the Nokia phone, and that was it then. That was the beginning of the challenge. That was like, you have this until, and there was a date set 8.5 weeks later in City Limits in Cork, and they were like, that's the first date of your new show. So there was a bit of pressure then. It was like, okay, the internet's gone, all the distractions, you say you can't do any writing, you say you can't do any of this, we're taking all that away now. Now can you write a show in the next 2 months? And it needs to be ready, and it needs to happen in City Limits Comedy Club. And that was the whole kind of premise of the thing. Also, that gig in City Limits, there was a little bit of extra pressure. We didn't advertise it online at all. I wasn't allowed to advertise it online, obviously, because I'm not online. but the promoter wasn't allowed to advertise it online, and we weren't allowed to sell tickets online. So we just went back to the 90s. We were like, what else can we do? We can do radio, we can do newspapers, we can do flyers, we can do posters, but nobody should hear about this show online. And then I went off. I was in Edinburgh for a month trying to write this show with just the old school phone. They set up a couple of gigs for me that were difficult to navigate to without a sat nav, because I had to go buy myself, the maps.
The CSO blue map.
I just had to buy the maps, and they were like, your gig is in Tormakeedy in Mayo. That's all I got. Like, it was just like, it's the name of the pub in Mayo, and I had to get there, and I tell you, it was so much fun. It was so much fun just trying to get to that gig. And then my agent was kind of like directing it as well. They said, what are you going to do about accommodation? And I was like, oh yeah, accommodation. And I thought, how do you book accommodation without the internet? It's really difficult.
These are like silly things that we don't
think of.
Yeah,
you just take it for granted. So then it was like, I tried ringing at 11811 on my phone. And I was like, that no longer works.
Still work?
No, of course it doesn't. The internet is invented, That's completely... So basically I was like, I either get up there and then look for a B&B and knock on their door or ring the number, or what I decided to do in the end was buy a tent. I rang the venue because I had the number of a venue. I was like, can I put a tent up outside the gig tonight? And they were like, yeah, if you want. So I went to Halfords and bought a tent.
And were they just normal with that? They
were okay with it, yeah, they were okay. I thought it just added to the experience. So I picked up my cameraman was with me, and I picked up my support act on the way, and we had so much fun getting there. It was incredible. And then even simple things like that, putting the tent up became a huge challenge because I didn't have YouTube or do you know what I mean? And like literally people that were coming to the gig that night, we were 2 hours later, I was still trying to put up a tent. I was really panicking, really badly. And some of the punters that had paid to see me came over and helped me put it up. But it was
and could
amazing.
You tell those people what you were doing and why you were doing it?
Yeah. I told them what I was doing. I was still doing the old show there, but I was kind of explaining, I've gone offline now, and I'd been offline like 2 weeks at that stage. And it was great. It was an amazing challenge, but also very, very hard. My wife took everything over. She was in Edinburgh for a little bit with me, but then there was a time when she wasn't there, and I remember driving into Edinburgh one day and basically like panicking. I was late for my gig. Then I got to a car park, scanned the QR code. I was like, I don't have that. I do not have that. So I was ringing my wife, who was back here in Cork, saying, would you be able to book me this car park in Edinburgh online? She's like, I'm Chris, I've got the 2 kids here, and it was really awkward. And eventually I actually happened to find a guy in the car park, and I was like, can I give you money there can you leave my car there? And he sorted it out. But yeah, it was that sort of, I got the freedom of not having any social media, but I'd painted myself into a corner with, having to print off all my boarding cards. I was in Liverpool for a couple of days, getting lost every single day, trying to find, I was doing a podcast one day, trying to find a comedy, like just getting lost as an adult.
So when you're going to the pub and you've got this block phone, were people looking at that if you left it out? Because I think we've a habit, I always do, put my phone on the
me too,
bar.
yeah.
And I always sit at the bar with my friends, like sitting high up.
Yeah.
Were they looking at that, go, what the?
Yeah, what is that?
Yeah,
a little bit, yeah. Thinking I was a hipster or something, But no, it is a strange thing to pull out. Like, it's like a burner phone, isn't it? Really, people are coming up trying to buy stuff off you. But people would mainly ask, is there snake on that? Is there snake on that?
I won't lie, I was going to ask you that question.
What's your snake score? What's your snake score? And I got very good at snake, but it was nowhere near as addictive as the actual, as being on your iPhone or.
I read somewhere before that we were the last generation that could experience going into a pub without the internet.
Yeah.
And that's now, like I'm in my 30s, and I think that's the last generation of it.
Yeah.
Now that you have been off, you were off it for 8 weeks. Do you miss it? Do you miss that? That time is gone now forever, that people are so online.
I miss it, yeah. And actually I kind of even miss that 8 weeks because I'm back on my phone now and I'm back on a tour, and I feel like a lot of the habits have come back. And I was editing my documentary last week, so I was looking back at the footage. So I was looking back at all this footage of me just having the Nokia, and I was really jealous of myself. I was really jealous of that, going, God, I really got so much done. I was so productive, and now I'm back to this, You know what I mean? I'm back to this, checking the weather on my phone instead of looking out the fucking window. Do you know, like, Jesus Christ, Chris, think for yourself for 5 minutes. What you survive for 8 weeks without it. You know where your house is. Stop sat-naving your way home. So I have a few lessons still to learn, but yeah, I'm grateful that we got to experience that though. They've nothing to compare it to now really if you have the internet growing up. And
to link that to pubs, the conversation, I think it's an Irish thing, isn't it, that we all love a conversation in a pub.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, is there a danger of that being lost because of having your phone out all the time and like you're not looking at it?
I think so, yeah. And there's also like a danger of everyone's got a camera in their pocket now. You know, you had fun nights out when you were a teenager and when you were in your early 20s, but there was no one like, you woke up with the fear, but you weren't like, did somebody film that? It's going to be there forever. Or is it going to just live in my mind for a couple of days and drive me mad? Or am I going to be ridiculed or you know what I mean, online about this thing?
Or if you say something that you know of the moment.
Yeah, or if you say something like, yeah, I feel like there's definitely a danger. There's definitely a danger to losing conversation. Not only for that, but just for people being distracted by their phones. That's why I do like this pub, all the distractions and stuff. I think there's enough going on around the place, you know? Like you look up there and you're like, wow. You know, any pubs that are in trouble, actually, I find that very funny. That they've just got loads of money stuck to the wall. They're like, pubs are struggling, but there's loads of money stuck to the wall. You're sending out mixed messages here.
I've actually, I never thought of that. Could and then up on the ceilings as well.
Money down. Start taking the money off the ceiling and you'll be grand. But no, there's definitely a danger of that being lost. And I'm so happy that I went through my 20s and a little bit of my 30s without the internet. Like, you know, we had some great nights out, but I'm not sure how I'd feel about them if they were filmed and they lived online forever, you know?
I love you're such a conversationalist. I think this, like doing this, to hear your stories and all that, how does that work in your mind? Does it just come natural to you? Did it always come natural to you actually, to be able to tell a story that, you know, if you close your eyes you can kind of feel, you know what you're talking about?
I think stories came from a little bit from ice. When I started gigging outside Cork, I was extremely paranoid about my accent and not being understood because I probably spoke a tiny bit faster. So then that sort of made me slow down, and then that became my kind of style, and slow down. And I was actually sharing car journeys up and down to Dublin with another comic. He doesn't do it anymore now, called Jason Coughlin, and we'd be on the way back from Dublin, and we'd be just shooting the breeze, like talking about other stories and stuff I didn't even think was stand up. And I'd tell him a story about something, and he'd say, "Oh my God, man, that has to be." In your routine, like you have to make a set, you have to do that, and it never occurred to me. So then he kept on encouraging me to go, you need to talk about that. Like I remember telling him how bad I was at hurling for some reason, and he was like, oh, that's funny, that's a bit. And I never really thought of it that way. I was just having a conversation about how bad I was at that thing, you know. And it was another time I was telling him about something else, like about I got offered to do like pornography one time.
And that doesn't happen every once in a while.
That's a whole other story.
When, how, where?
That's a whole other story. But I didn't think it was stand-up at all. It was when I was working as an electrician at a fashion show. A guy came over to me and it was like pointing at my crotch and I was like, geez, you got a lovely package. Would you like to model underwear? And I was like, so naive, you know. I was like, really? And he was like, yeah, you could model underwear, I think. You could... You've got a great physique, you've got a great package. What I didn't tell him was I had 2 unoperated hernias in my groin, which was kind of really, you know, enhancing me there, I suppose. And I remember telling the guy about it. I was holding a ladder for an electrician and he came back down the ladder and I was telling him, I was like, this guy here is asking me to, you know, model underwear for him tonight in his hotel room. And it was really creepy now that I say it like that. It was good money, there was money on the table. You know. That
is wild.
It is wild, yeah. Yeah, but I do like telling stories. I love mining my past. I love going back. I told stories about cutting my own hair on my communion and stories about my 21st. Actually stuff that probably wouldn't have, you know, with phones not being there. My 21st, I had a story about my 21st that you know, it was upstairs in the GA club, typical 21st that you would have. All my cousins are there. There's a DJ there. We're having a great time. And the DJ was kind of going, all right, everybody, well, let's do the conga line. We're all on this big conga line. And then he's like, let's take the conga line down the stairs, in through the bar, out into the car park, and then you come back up into this venue. This is something you did all the time. And I was like, that's great, let's do it. And as I get down into the bar, I realised like there's the afters of a funeral down there. But you can't really reverse, you know. It's a 70 strong conga, there's so many people behind me. I just kind of had to let it push me around the room and maybe console a few people on the way. Back up into the DJ then and said, that was a terrible idea, like there was a bloody funeral downstairs. And he was like, yeah, I know. So he was just having a crack with them.
So he was getting his laugh out of it as well.
With them, yeah. But that's something that I embellish it a tiny bit, but you know.
I love this place.
Yes.
I love the Oval. How and why is it important to you when you think of it? Because do you bring people here?
I do. I show it off actually, like it's mine. I do. Any comics that I'm on with down here, I'm like, we'll go to the Oval for a pint, lads. You'll love it. And they all have the same reaction. They absolutely love it. It's good pints, good people. Do you know what I mean? Good vibes. I like, especially when you get in the little snug area here with the lads, and you feel like you're in your own world. Then, do you know what I mean? The last time I was in here, actually, with a couple of comics, a pint just came over to me. And I don't know where it came from. Somebody just sent it from out here, from the ether. It was like, that's for Chris Kent. And it was kind of, I felt kind of cool in front of everyone. Then I was like, somebody just have to give me a pint. And then I just drank it and I was like, it could have been anything. And I'm like the most easy person.
What is it about knowing the bar staff in a pub that makes you feel extra special? Because everyone has that one place that they go to.
Yeah.
For you, it's here.
Yeah.
That when you walk in, they know it's you. Is it? It's not like VIP is the wrong word. What is it that we have? Is it? Are we proud of it? Mine.
I think knowing your order and all that probably. You know, if everyone wants to be that guy, don't they? Like just walk in and go, oh, yeah, the usual. But a barman can't remember what thousands of people want.
What's it like at Christmas?
Lovely at Christmas with the lights and everything, sparkly lights. Do you know what I mean? Winter, people are in here. It's lovely. It's cozy. The fire is on. If you can get a seat, if you can get in here, it's absolutely beautiful.
Irish bars throughout Ireland. There's a reason why people come to Ireland to see these pubs, isn't it? Like we do have some sort of community that I don't think you get that in the UK or you get that anywhere else.
Oh no, 100%. And I'm not like, I lived in England for 6 years and it doesn't touch it. Like it's just a completely different vibe, you know. I mean, you see hospitality here in general, I think we just do it very well. And we're just friendly. I think we're just friendly, and it makes all the difference. It costs nothing really, just to be nice and say, have a good day, do this, do that, whatever. But you just feel like you're more welcomed, definitely, in a bar like this, and maybe that's what brings people in.
For you, and for the gigs that you do in bars right around Ireland, is there a few of them that you're drawn to, that is just extra special, like the Oval?
Different bars as well?
Yeah,
absolutely. There's a couple more in Cork. I think Collins over there on Barrack Street is another nice little bar. It's a similar kind of aesthetic. I like the fire, the good pints. Nothing too
glitzy.
I could say glitzy or pretentious. No tellies on is nice actually. Even if you are curious about the score in the match, like I prefer not to have the telly on in the background. If you're coming into a pub, you're coming in for a chat. Really, if you want to watch the match, I think there's bars that you can do that in. There's a sports bar where you can watch the match on the big screen, and I'm there for that as well. But when it's a bar like this, and you're going to have a chat, and you can wind people up and say, oh, Liverpool are down 1-0 or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it needs to be on the telly.
There's so many comedians in Ireland that I don't think people realise that the comedy scene is massive here.
Yeah.
Like every night of the week. I know in Dublin there's a comedy show on. I presume in Cork it's the exact same.
Yes.
Who are you watching of the younger ones that are coming up now?
There's great talent here. There's great talent in Cork. People up and coming. Ciara Barnes now, they've just moved to London. Great comedian. I just love, a lot of my favourite comedians are Irish. I love Shane Clifford. He's not up and coming, but he's absolutely brilliant. Love watching him all the time. Killian Sunderman. There's so many that are just, they're really funny, and I enjoy watching them. Even if I've seen the set before, I enjoy even if, you know what I mean, I just enjoy watching the crowd's reaction to them and the magic of, oh, I know they're going to really enjoy this now, and he's going to tag it, and it's going to be fantastic.
The comedy festivals, I love because you guys are all down there, but you've so much free time.
Yeah.
Has there been anyone that you've seen down the back that you went, they're at my gig as you're up there? Because I saw somebody, I don't know who it was, but Tommy Tiernan was down the corner laughing his arse off. And I just remember thinking, God, if I was a comedian now and I could see this fella down the back on his break, watching, laughing.
Yeah, well, you share the bills with them sometimes, and you're backstage, and Tommy does watch an awful lot. Like he really reads the room, and he stands out there and watches whoever's on, and it's great. And then he comes backstage, and it is a bit surreal to be having those kind of conversations with him and going, oh, that was a great bit, or this, and just chatting about the gig in general. Like, you know, it is definitely a kind of a pinch me kind of moment to see somebody that was in my, you know, on my DVD collection or whatever, or someone that I watched religiously after I discovered them, that they're now watching me doing a gig. It's incredible. Yeah, it's incredible. Are
there older ones that would be watching some of the stuff that you do, would be like, oh, I probably do this different way? Like, I know Carl Spain's very good at that. I think you can throw him anything and he's like, would you not write this or would you not write that?
Yeah, and I'm all there for it. When I was writing the new show over in Edinburgh, Jim Owen came to see me. I love Jim Owen.
I love Jim Owen.
Absolutely love Jim Owen. And my show was very much a different thing every single day. I was up there with a notebook doing this and this. And he just, it's great to get an outsider's perspective sometimes, because he just said, I had this bit in the middle of the show, this big kind of rant about going down a hole online, you know, this big huge rant, and he was like, oh, I think that could be near the end of the show. That probably suits the end of the show. It was a tiny little observation that I went, oh yeah, it made all the difference. I kind of went and moved it almost immediately, and it kind of, the show started to shape an awful lot better after that.
Well, look, man, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you today.
Likewise.
An incredible venue, the Oval.
I know.
Thanks for meeting us here.
Fantastic.
Cheers.
Cheers.